This is Joe Van Cleve, and this is not a vlog. Well, it's December 31st, 2018, and I need to get out today, get a little sunlight, and looky there. Yes, we have snow on the ground still, and it still hasn't melted because the temperatures are below freezing, even in the height of the day, because we're a mile elevation, and we are generally fairly dry, but in the case of this last storm last week, yeah, we got maybe 4 or 5 inches, nothing big, but it doesn't melt very much, in the shade especially. I'm going to go out here and do something. Well, that was pretty good. I had some really good enchiladas and eggs and red and green chili, coffee, and I sat down and did a little typing on my thermal typewriter, mainly about an upcoming video that's going to be about my abacus collection, because of course I added one more piece to that collection today, so I'm going to head home. Looks like it's getting cloudy. There might be a snowstorm kind of starting to roll in here later today or tonight, so anyways, heading down to the car. Parking is always a problem here by UNM, and so you only have like 45 minutes to an hour parking. Well, it's Monday just after noontime, and yes, we're starting to get a little bit more snow. It's been a fun start of the winter here in Albuquerque. We're getting a little snow, a little bit more than we've had in the last few years, at least, I think. I don't think we've had a snow like this 2 weeks in a row, you know, before the old stuff melted. We have new stuff starting to come down. Well, anyways, I was over at Winnings, my favorite place for coffee and whatnot, and had enchiladas and eggs. It was really good. Coffee. Did a little writing on the thermal typewriter. I had one of the employees at Winnings ask about the thermal typewriter, and so of course I had to explain it and all that. So sometimes I get a little bit too enthused, I think. Anyways, so this afternoon I think I'm going to sit down and work on a couple video ideas. So I'm going to work on a video for the abacus, because I've been thinking about, since I've collected 2 new abaci in the last month, I guess, it's probably time that I do a little video inventorying my abacus collection and explaining what I like about them, the differences between the various styles and all that stuff. So that might be fun. I think there's another video I might do that's about this last Sunday morning on the NBC Sunday Today show. There was a story about typewriters, and that was kind of cool. So I'm going to talk about that also. AeroPress coffee. So along with doing a video about my Soroban or abacus collection, I do want to probably do some future videos that do introduce the topic of how to use the abacus for addition and subtraction mainly. It's kind of one of those things where you could easily get bored if you're not interested in that kind of stuff. It's not difficult. There's just a few key concepts that you have to grasp. And so I'd like to try doing one of those videos. I've done a few in the past about that, but I'd like to make it so that it's watchable and interesting to everybody. Keeping in mind, of course, that this channel's have a variety of different subject matters, not just photography, not just typewriters, not just calculators and adding machines and whatnot, not just office supply stationery, but it's always been kind of a mix of all those things. So I am basically pretty aware that oftentimes I will get on a particular theme or subject matter for a number of videos in a row, ignoring the other topics I cover, and I know some of the viewers kind of are turned off by that. So it's sort of a balance between doing different topics, kind of being varied, mixing them up all the time, so everybody has their opportunity to watch topics that they really enjoy. So hopefully I cannot bore the rest of you at the expense of entertaining the math geeks and all that in the crowd. And really, actually, to be an abacus aficionado, you don't really have to be a math geek, because it's not really complicated. Mathematics is pretty simple arithmetic, and it's more about, I guess, the history of them, the fact that, well, it's actually similar to typewriters, and that is an interesting concept that I haven't really thought about. You can write, you can word process, obviously, on any kind of a writing capable software and hardware platform in the digital domain. But we like typewriters because they're physical and they're dedicated and they interact with our hands nicely, among other reasons. And I guess you could say for addition and subtraction, there's a similar thing with the abacus. There are more efficient ways to do arithmetic with an electronic calculator or whatever, a calculator on your phone, but they're physical, they're elegantly simple, they have a history to them, and they work pretty easily, and they actually sharpen your mind. Learning to do complementary arithmetic relatively speedily does require a little bit of practice, and that keeps your mind sharp, especially when you get to be my age. So that's another thing that the abacus has going for it, is it helps us to stay young. So I've done a little bit of rearranging in my office, and in order to show you that, we have to go to the garage. Makes no sense, right? Yeah, I know. So this is a receiver. This is an old Lafayette receiver that was given to me, along with a Sanyo metal compatible cassette deck. And I had both of these units out here in the garage, and I bought a new set of bookshelf speakers and from Polk, the T15s I think they were, and I had them mounted up here in the garage. It was really nice, rocking out on some music, and then it got cold and all of a sudden winter hit, and I discovered myself not hanging out in the garage quite as much as I used to, and also I was kind of concerned about the cassette deck. And so earlier this week, or actually last week, I took the cassette deck into my office and took the speakers into my office and hooked them all up there, but I left the receiver out here. A receiver has maybe 4 different functions. First of all, it has a tuner. Secondly, it has an amplifier to drive your speakers. Thirdly, it has equalization like tone controls and loudness control. And fourthly, it has switching capability. You can switch different inputs. And you might say also maybe phono input, preamp is another function, but those are the main 4 functions of a receiver. The problem with this particular receiver is that one of the channels is dead in all modes except the tape input mode. The tape input mode gets both left and right channel. All the other modes, the receiver mode and all that, it's only right channel. And so I found myself having to manually disconnect RCA cables in the back of the receiver and switch my inputs manually, which kind of defeated the purpose of having the receiver. And also, the one channel that is good, the right channel, is noisy when you first turn it on when it's cold. Probably a bad transistor, a thermal transistor problem. For that reason, I decided when I moved my tape deck and speakers into my office, I wasn't going to bring the receiver in there. So you might be asking, well, how are you driving the speakers if you don't have a receiver? Well, let's go in the office and I'll show you. All right, so there's my Remington Quiet Rider, and behind it I have this little wire rack right here. This is one of these little shelf racks for kitchen cabinets, wire rack, and then there's a piece of plywood on top of it, and that supports the Sanyo metal cassette deck. It does normal chromium dioxide and metal tape. And then the important thing for amplification is I have this little SMSL brand solid state. It's a class F, and all it has on the back of it is a pair of RCA inputs and speaker outputs, power switch, and volume control. This little amplifier drives my Polk loudspeakers, and I have a Polk loudspeaker. The right channel is there. This is a little T15, and the other one is right there. The left channel one is up on the bookcase there. There's no switchability with this system, unlike a true receiver, and so what I'm having to do is I'm having to switch using actually manually pulling my RCA cables off this adapter and swapping them out. And so I have a tape deck as a source, and then I have this little Grundig Globe Traveler shortwave radio. This is an old one I've had for a long time, and it has a line output that's independent of its own volume setting. So this shortwave radio does AM/FM radio, of course. So I just basically swap out those inputs into the amplifier to get sound, to get audio, and that's my makeshift audio system right now. The lens I was using on this camera for most of this vlog is a body cap lens. It is a plastic body cap that mounts onto Micro Four Thirds cameras, and it has a little lens built in. And it is a fixed focal length of 15 millimeters. It's a fixed aperture of f8. So if you remember the old expression about f8 and be there, talking about film cameras and street photography, well, this is an equivalent to a 30 millimeter f8 lens. Anyways, it has a manual focusing tab, so you can close the lens up like that, and then you can set it to infinity. This little click stop is actually the hyperfocal distance for infinity. It close focuses to 0.3 meters, 30 centimeters, so fairly short. Anyway, that's what I was shooting with to shoot most of this vlog, but it's a fairly slow lens, being f8, and so when I was indoors here in the office, I had to swap it out, and the lens I swapped it with is the 7 Artisans. Okay, shooting into a hand mirror. So this is the 7 Artisans 25 millimeter lens, so it's equivalent in angle of view to a 50 millimeter lens in full frame. It's an f1.8 lens. It's already wide open to f1.8, and I can of course stop it down. And it has a, I think, a 9 or an 11 bladed aperture, and the aperture blades are all curved, so it gives a nice bokeh effect for the out of focus areas. But anyway, that's a little manual focus lens in a native Micro Four Thirds mount, and it makes for a nice little equivalent to a 50 millimeter little fast lens. It's not super sharp in the middle as you would hope it would be. It's not a software corrected lens, but it's adequate, and it's kind of a nice little handy small little lens for doing these kinds of close-up shooting, because it'll focus really close. There you go. End of digital camera talking for now, because that's boring. So this is a preview. Let's see if I can get this here. So this is the Soraban, a 1.4 Soraban that I purchased several weeks ago from a thrift store in Albuquerque, and the one I just purchased today from a thrift store. This is a really cool one. This is not a vlog.